To get more views on the KDP's trend and on other issues, let's go now live to the Netherlands. Joost Jongerden, Assistant Professor at Wageningen University, is joining us. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Jongerden. KDP is digging a trench on Rojava, southern Kurdistan border, while Turkey has stationed dozens of its tanks on northern Kurdistan border with Rojava. What is your reading of this escalation, bearing in mind the Kobani attacks?
Rojava is siege. It's a military siege, it's an economic siege, it's a political siege. And the digging of a trench by the KDP is an embarrassment. It's felt as an embarrassment by many Kurds. And that also explains the outrageous reactions, the anger, the dismay. In practice, however, I think that the digging of a trench will not have much effect. Already the KDP had sealed off the region, and it's merely a symbolic measure. But symbols are very important. Many had expected that the KDP would search for new relations, would search for connection, and instead of that, it is making the difference between people in the south of Kurdistan and in Rojava only bigger. So instead of creating connections, it creates distance between the people in different parts of Kurdistan. And that's a new low point, I think, in inter-Kurdish politics. It's also a new low point in the history of Kurdistan.
Democratic Union Party's co-chair Asi Abdullah said earlier in an interview that the war in Syria is the war of powers, while in Rojava it's the war of defense. What about you, Mr. Jongerden? How would you describe the war in Syria and the war in Rojava?
Well, I think I would agree with Asi Abdullah. It's a war of defense in Rojava, and there's a war of powers in Syria. It's a war of the great powers of the UK, of France, of Russia, of the United States. It's also a war of regional powers, the involvement of Qatar, of Saudi Arabia, of Turkey, but of course also of KDP with the event of the digging of a trench, only underlining its involvement in a negative way. We also see, I think, the Kurdish Hezbollah being involved in the war in Syria. So in the end, it's also a war about the political future of Syria. Will we have a sectarian Syria? Will we have a Syria which is fragmented, or will we have a Syria which is democratic?
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with what some observers say, that the violence in the Middle East is a symptom that could redraw Middle East map for the first time in a century?
I agree with people saying that it could result in the drawing of new maps. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that the drawing of new maps will create any solution. We have seen in the past that new maps have been drawn, that new boundaries have been created. And I do not think that the creation of new boundaries, the creation of new maps will bring a solution. I much more believe in the project of democratic autonomy, already mentioned by other people in your program, which is being developed by the PJD, and which is a new political imaginary, a new political idea on which we can develop new ways of living together instead of new boundaries which only separates people.
Mm-hmm. What are the challenges and prospects of this Rojava democratic model in the Middle East, Mr. Jongerden?
This is, of course, a very difficult question, and maybe the strength is that this model has strong local support. There's also a clear political idea about how to create a system of self-governance, a system of self-administration. But the threat is, of course, that Rojava is under siege, politically, economically, military, that it's isolated, that it lacks support from outside. The weakness, maybe, is that there is a lack of experience. It's a new political model without much of experience, so it has also to be developed newly. But there are also opportunities for mobilizing outside support, opportunities also to be critically to yourself and to learn from mistakes. The opportunity of strong support of people on the ground. But of course, the outcome is very, very, very unsure because of the whole situation in Rojava, in Syria, in the region itself.
Will this Rojava model succeed and subsequently implemented on the whole Middle East, as some Kurdish politicians say?
I think it has the potential. Already it's an important accomplishment. What people in Rojava have done in the region is of tremendous importance. The self-administration, the recognition of multiplicity, the recognition of religious and ethnic diversity, the recognition of languages. It's a search for self-administration. It's a search for local solutions for large problems, but local solution in the sense that you build up things bottom up. And I think if we can learn one thing from the history of democracy, is that democracy never trickles down, it always bubbles up, it starts at the bottom. And here we see, of course, in an experimental form, here we see a new model of trying to live together. And as far as I can see, it's the only, or one of the very few, or maybe the only way of creating a living together in the Middle East. It's also a way for the Kurds of rendering borders irrelevant and also creating new ways of living. And in that sense, sticking to the idea of democratic autonomy or democratic federalism is also a way to go beyond the trenches which are currently being digged by KDP, going beyond the walls which are being created by Turkey.
As you mentioned, Mr. Jongerden, there is a lack of support from Western countries to the Rojava revolution. Why this ignorance, in your opinion?
Well, that's a very difficult question. But in the system of states, the states always look to other states. We live in a state system. So what we have to do, or what the Kurds are trying to do, is trying to be visible. And the most important in this respect are three things. That's diplomacy, diplomacy, and diplomacy. Trying to be seen, trying to become visible, trying to get delegations to Rojava to show the situation in Rojava, but also to show the political experiments and the new ways of living together which people try to develop in Rojava bottom up.
Joost Jongerden, Assistant Professor at Wageningen University, thank you very much for speaking to Ronahî.
Thank you very much.